Sam,
Yeah, Don?
what's the letter of the day?
The letter A.
The letter A?
I like coming to AA. There's already more A's than I got in high school.
Where'd you hear that?
I heard it through the grapevine.
Welcome. It's the AA Grapevine half-hour variety hour, featuring the collective voices of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm Don, an alcoholic in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Hey, Don. Hey, everybody. I'm Sam, an alcoholic in Palm Springs, California. Hey, Don, I've got a question.
Yeah?
You know, when we're opening this show, we've got a statement that you just read, featuring the collected voices of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah.
I love the way that sounds, the collected voices of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's what the grapevine is. And then AA World Services is the collective voice of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love that distinction. I just wanted to point that out to listeners. I thought it was pretty cool.
Well, that's one thing that's great about the grapevine. And I've used the grapevine many times when I was traveling, carry it with me and have trouble getting to a meeting. And you read it and you read, just short personal stories.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing here.
Exactly.
Sam, I've been thinking about relationships. Well, from our guest today and his story, and just how AA and recovery has changed the way that I am in relationships and how I maintain relationships. For example, one of the things that I learned in AA, and I learned it on my fourth step, was I needed to make amends to my mother. I had borrowed money from her for a long time, a lot of money. She was always good for a touch. I could always get $100 from her if I'd ask her. So I got some money together and was prepared to make amends for that, and sat down with her and talked about alcoholism, which was a taboo subject. She was not comfortable talking about it. She became comfortable the longer that we talked. And then she started sharing with me about other members of the family who were alcoholic. It was secret, because being an alcoholic was very shameful in my family. And as I was talking, I described what I was doing. I was making amends to her for all the money that I had borrowed and never paid back, never really intended to pay back. And I wanted to start paying her back now. And she said, I don't want your money. This is what I want, which is to sit and talk and have you here. And we've had this incredible conversation. What she wanted was me to participate in the relationship. Ever since that afternoon when I had lunch with her, I stayed in touch with her, and I called her once a week, no matter what. I was able to be with her for the rest of her life. And I was able to be with her when at the end of her life, she was in a nursing home, and I was there every day, helped to take care of her. And that was what she wanted, was a real relationship with me. Because when I was drinking, I didn't, about 15, 20 minutes, it's time for me to leave. I got to go get something to drink. Did relationships change with you when you got sober?
Yeah, they sure did. And it was, it took a little time. Of course, I had to work through the program, let things work on me. But it's funny that, you went there with your mother, and my immediate thought was about my grandmother. I spent a whole lot of time with her for at least the last 10 years of her life. Just like you described, when I was at her house in my drinking days, it was a short visit because I had some drinking to do, or I was hungover and just didn't want to be there anyway. And sometimes I just didn't even show up. Though, a specific example of a relationship change with me and Granny, I remember sitting in her kitchen, and this is several years into recovery. Granny was a Southern Baptist. I grew up Baptisterian, Baptist and Presbyterian, Baptist on one side, family, Presbyterian on the other. And religion is not for me. I'm an atheist, and I'm very happy with where I am with that. I'm spiritual, and life is awesome in recovery. Granny and I sat in her kitchen and she started talking about God. And she was talking about God from her perspective within her religion. And I was able to sit there and talk about God from my perspective in my experience in spirituality and not make her wrong for what she was talking about and what she believed. And we found absolute common ground in having that conversation. Now, previously, I would have shut that conversation down. I would, at best, I would not have let it happen.
Mm-hmm.
At worst, I would have been an absolute jackass. But that's not what happened. And she and I had this incredible conversation, this moment of true intimate relation that a grandmother and grandson never would have had if I had not gotten sober in Alcoholics Anonymous and worked this program. It was a beautiful situation. So that's just one really happy memory of a relationship change, of an example of how that relationship changed with me and her.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Things that other people in AA have modeled for me, I've learned to do, like to show up for other people. Like if there is a funeral,
Mm-hmm.
someone loses someone that they care about and they need to go to the funeral, I'll go to a funeral to support that person, even if I don't know the person who died. I wouldn't have done that before. I would go feel sad for them sitting in the bar during happy hour,
Yeah, really.
and maybe talk about them. But that's not really being there for them.
And that's the difference. I mean, there's a country song, and I do not know my country songs, but I remember hearing this one, and it says something along the lines of, to be a friend would like to have.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened. That's who I have become in my recovery.
Yeah. That's what I strive to be. I've had some great examples over the years in AA of people modeling the behavior. People
It's really
showing
sweet
up.
of you to talk about me like that, Don. I appreciate that.
Thanks so much, Sam.
I'm glad I could be there for you.
I appreciate you.
And I appreciate you.
Well, before this turns into a love fest, let's...
That's almost as bad as a gratitude meeting.
Yeah. Wait a minute. This is turning into a gratitude meeting.
Today, we're talking to Tom Z about their story in this month's Grapevine magazine, My Texas Pen Pal, and his 23-year relationship with Keith. Classic Grapevine is the overall topic this month in the magazine. So after the interview, we will play a short archival recording of Bill Wilson speaking about his pivotal experience in the Mayflower Hotel in a segment called Blast from the Past.
All right. But before Bill Wilson gets all fired up, let's meet our guest.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tom Z from Coles Point, Virginia, and it's an honor and pleasure to be here today.
Hey, Tom, really glad you joined us.
Tom, when did you get sober?
I got sober May 7th, 1991, around 12 o'clock when they put the handcuffs on me.
Oh, so there were sound effects.
Oh, yeah.
Sound effects, and your life had become unmanageable?
It's really funny. I didn't see it that way, but yeah, it took a lawyer telling me that I needed to do something about my drinking and drugging. And I just looked at him like, what? And he told me to go to rehab. I asked him what that was, and he explained it to me and told me exactly where to go. And I went, and I was there 17 days, and I was therapeutically discharged. That's what they call it when they kick you out for dispensing narcotics on the addictions unit. So the very next day, I went to the next rehab, and I'm probably the only person that almost got arrested trying to get in rehab because, I called them, or before I went over there, I said, how much money do I need? And they said, $13,000. Okay. Went home, opened the safe, got $13,000. I showed up. I had my same bag of clothes and my boom box, and I showed up, and they said, come back tomorrow. No, you take me now. No, come back tomorrow. No, you take me now. And then they went, you want us to call security? And I said, I'll see you tomorrow morning.
So it sounds like you were absolutely serious about getting sober. So, when the cuffs went on, when that lawyer told you that you needed to do something about your drinking and using, Did you realize that you had a problem at that point, or?
No, actually, the truth be told, it wasn't until the night that I asked Melvin to be my sponsor. And he told me to tell him my story. And I told him everything. I ended it with, but I don't think I'm an alcoholic or a drug addict. I just got bad luck. And, exactly. Yeah. When he quit laughing, let me see if I understand this right. You're facing 85 years in the penitentiary. You just got out of jail. You just got kicked out of one rehab, and you're in your second rehab, and your life's not unmanageable. He says you're one of two things: you're either stupid or you're. Well, back then nobody talked to me that way.
Yeah.
He said, "You go back to your room tonight. You stand in front of the mirror, and you tell the exact same story you just told me to yourself in the mirror." And by the time I was halfway finished, I could not believe what I'd become. I didn't know the person I was talking to. It was the first time in 30 years that I'd taken an actual honest look at myself. And I tried to sleep that night and I couldn't. Tossed and turned. I got out of bed, got on my knees, and I asked God for help. And I said, I'll do whatever it takes. Just please help me. That was the defining moment.
Wow.
From that moment on, there's been no ifs, ands, or buts. I've known from that moment I'm an alcoholic and drug addict. I've never wavered from that.
You saw yourself as you really are for the first time.
Yes. Well, all I saw was a big black hole, pure evil. I just knew I wasn't the person that my parents raised. It's funny when I first started going to AA meetings, and I went to a lot of speaker meetings, and I heard these stories about how, my father beat my mother, they kicked my dog, that kind of stuff. And I came from Leave It to Beaverland. I never in my life ever heard my father raise his voice to my mother. I mean, I'm 69 years old. And when I talk to my brother on the phone or my kids, the last thing that's said is, I love you. And that's the way it was always in my family. Truth be told, the minute I got on my own, I made every wrong decision that I could make. I was a champion. It was a wrong decision.
One thing I've learned from listening to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of speaker meetings and hearing people's stories is that I've thought that the way I was raised was the reason that I drank. In fact, I began to see from hearing story after story, blaming that situation, that really has nothing to do with why I'm an alcoholic and why I drank the way I drank. Because people who have horrible situations growing up, much worse than mine. My family was Leave It to Beaver as well. It doesn't make any difference. People that are growing up with no love in their family whatsoever, abandoned by their parents, and they become alcoholics. Then people who have a beautiful life growing up, as you described yourself, and as I did, it doesn't make any difference. We still end up wanting to drink, and alcohol seems to be the answer to everything.
An alcoholic is going to find a way to drink and a reason to justify it in any way, shape, or form. That's what we do.
Whenever I speak, I always start out the same way. I lived a wonderful life all the way up to the age of 5. And at 5 years old, I got into an argument. A bunch of us were playing, we got in an argument who's going to be Fury and who's going to be Flicka. And this boy picked up a pair of scissors and threw them at me and hit me in the face. And I lost my right eye. From that moment, I hated the way I looked. Back in those days, your prosthetics weren't that good. I always had to try so much harder just to be as good. That's the way I looked at it, just to be as good as anybody else. And first time at 13, when I got commode hugging drunk that night, man, I was it. I was funny. I was good looking. I could dance and all that good stuff. Went home, fell down the steps, got sick, headache, it felt like crap, and couldn't wait to do it again.
But all of that was totally worth it.
Oh, yeah, man, because it worked, man. It made me, and I could drink a lot, so that it made it even better. It worked for many, many years.
Well, I'm really glad you found your sobriety, though, because one of the things that has happened is, as Don and I were talking in the earlier part of the opening about relationships, you write in this month's issue of the Grapevine about a relationship that you never would have dreamed of having.
It was truly, truly amazing. When I was incarcerated, there was a gentleman that brought the meeting into me. We had only one meeting a week, and I never missed a meeting because I was terrified that he wouldn't come back, because there were so many times when it was just me and him. One night he brought in this yellow sheet of paper and told me to fill it out and get somebody to write me. And a gentleman wrote me, Mike, I believe he was from Maine, and he wrote me the whole time I was incarcerated. Those two guys probably did more for me than anybody. Jail was okay, whatever, until one day one person figured out who I was. And then, it was a nightmare. These two guys, they helped me, with the steps and helped me keep on an even keel, keep me from doing anything really stupid.
But that was through the mail?
Yes. Yeah, through the correspondence program, AA correspondence program.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was released, I immediately wrote to New York and said, give me somebody. So I started that, and eventually I got Keith. Well, Keith and I corresponded for, 17 years. And I mean, he was like a member of the family. He knew about all my kids, my wife, and everybody in my family knew about Keith. He was just about ready to get out, and he got real sick, and they transferred him somewhere else.
You quit hearing from him?
Yeah, it was just right at the end. And then it was Christmas morning. I was watching a football game, and his phone number comes across my TV screen. And I went, I don't know anybody from there. And all of a sudden I hear this, hey, Tom, it's Keith. How you doing? And I almost died. I jumped up, then I tripped over the coffee table, and I leaped, and I grabbed the phone, and we started talking. And eventually I said, I have to ask this, Keith, are you going to any meetings? And he goes, I go every day. I open the club. I've got the key to the club, the local AA club. Man, I swear I had tears going down my face. Because I've been taking meetings into facilities for almost 30 years. I've seen success. I've seen a lot of failure, but I've seen success. I'm so happy about this Grapevine podcast. I think this is really a great deal. Of all the things that you take into a facility, I could take 50 grapevines, 50 big books, 50 12 and 12s, and 50 anything else. And the grapevines would be the first thing going. They're on them like, boom.
Yeah.
The guys that I write, if we write and we write for a few months, I know that it's working. I automatically, not a prescription, a subscription.
It could be considered a prescription,
to the
right?
Grapevine, because in that way, we talk about the articles, because every month it's a different step and a different tradition. And it's a way to, to work through the steps with them without them sometimes not even knowing what's going on. But,
So are you talking with them through the mail, or are you doing telephone calls or Zoom calls? Or
99% of it's through the mail. I do have one person that I communicate weekly through the phone, but everybody else is through the mail. It's funny. I have met a few gentlemen that went through a program that one of the local places have that I went through. And, they went away for a few years, and I wrote them. I've went and picked them up, across the state, drove, picked them up. I've helped them out financially to get them into a, halfway house, whatever. I've worked with them for years. As the saying says, I'm responsible. I can never repay what AA has given me,
Well, you're uniquely qualified to work with people in prison and to write letters, but would you think anybody can?
Oh, without a doubt.
I've spoken at the local prisons around here, and it's very uncomfortable for me because it looks like nobody's interested. Well, there's two things. One, I'm a joker, so I'm always cracking jokes, and that there's no laughter. So it's like, this is too serious. But also it seems like there'll be, what I usually do is find the one or two people who are really paying attention. But everybody else just seems like they're killing time. So what's the experience like from the other side? What can you say to that?
It's people have this conception that, well, I've never done time, so I've got nothing to share. I've got nothing they want. Well, truth be told, the guys that are in there, they know how to break the law. They know how to sell dope. They know how to steal. They know how to do all this stuff. They don't know how to stay sober. So I know and this is just my own personal opinion, when I was arrested, I didn't care what you did, where you came from. I wanted to know how you stayed sober. Now, I have one experience that I'll never forget. There was a guy at Lorton Penitentiary that was in there. He'd done 14 years out of a 15-year bit for murder. And he'd been coming to the AA meeting on Monday nights. And he came up to me and he says, I believe that you believe the stuff you're telling us. He says, and I'm tired of living the way I'm living. Will you help me?
Wow.
And I went, okay.
Beautiful.
And so we worked together. He finished out his term, and I got to speak at his 2-year anniversary on the street. And we kept in touch for about 13 years. He got married. He became a deacon. Turned his life completely around. He's doing well. All I know is I'm there to carry the message of recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're opening up, the first thing I wanted most, absolutely most, when I first got sober, was to be able to forget my past.
Mm-hmm.
I was so embarrassed. I felt so bad for the pain that I caused my mother. I don't even know if I should say this, but I'm probably the only person in AA that had the president of the United States tell his mother that her son had been arrested for narcotics. You can't imagine how that feels.
Mm-hmm.
And through working the steps and working the program, what I've come to find is just what we were just talking about. My past is absolutely my strongest spiritual tool that I have in my toolkit.
Mm-hmm. I
can help, other guys. Other guys don't have to do the things that I did. I can share it. I can own it. And you're talking, when I made amends to my mother, she said, just keep doing what you're doing. And after 20 years, and she asked me, don't you think you need to slow down and quit doing what you're doing? And I went, well, Mom, do you want the old Tom back? Oh, no. Just make sure you get a lot of rest. It's I truly, what you're talking about, because, when my mother, she was superwoman,
Mm-hmm.
when she got cancer, the honor of round-the-clock care for the last 4 months of my mother's life. It was,
You were able to be there.
that's it. As I say, I was responsible, and I did things that I never thought I could ever do.
Mm-hmm.
It was an honor to be able to do it. And it's strictly through the grace of God and Alcoholics Anonymous. I would have never been able to do it before.
Tom, thanks for joining us today and sharing your story with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tom.
It's been a grand experience.
All right. We're up into the grand territory.
Yeah, baby.
Tom's article, My Texas Pen Pal, is on page 58 of the November 2021 issue of the AA Grapevine magazine. If you'd like to know more about the Corrections Correspondence Service, you can get to that page on aa.org by Googling AA Prison Correspondence, and that'll take you right to that page.
Blast from the past.
Here I was on a Saturday afternoon, alone in the Mayflower Hotel at Akron, Ohio. I walked down to the lobby, strode back and forth. At one end, there was a plaque with the names of the various churches and preachers. At the other end of my beat, there was a bar room. The bar room was filling up, and so were the people in it. And that buzz, so characteristic of bars, had a pleasant sound to me. Soon I found myself saying, well, perhaps I could go in there and have a drink of ginger ale and possibly scrape an acquaintance to pass away this lonely afternoon. And then I caught myself and thought, well, I have been restored to sanity. I can see I'm in danger. I walked over to the church directory again, thinking, well, now perhaps I had better find an alcoholic that I might talk to. Because at last, I see that I need such a person as much as he could possibly need me.
I'm at
Rusty, how long have you been sober?
40 years, one day at a time.
It's a good life being sober.
Yeah, but I do miss the good old days.
How come?
Well, I wasn't that good, and I wasn't that old.
It's really not that funny. Thanks for joining us. The AA Grapevine Half-Hour Variety Hour is posted every Monday and is produced by AA Grapevine, Inc. We don't speak for AA as a whole. We share the experience, strength, and hope of members to help others recover from alcoholism. Podcast info, including how to call in, is at aagrapevine.org/podcast. Find AA Grapevine on Instagram and the AA Grapevine channel on YouTube. All things Grapevine are available at aagrapevine.org. If you want to know more about AA, Google Alcoholics Anonymous and your city or visit aa.org.